I never imagined that a poor girl could inspire a millionaire's daughter to find her voice again. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The air was heavy with tension, and my heart pounded like a drum. It was one of those days when the sun shone too brightly, mocking the shadows lurking in my mind. I felt so small, like a leaf caught in the roaring winds of a storm, that I stood there, in the middle of a bustling street, surrounded by voices, yet utterly alone. My clothes were frayed, most of my friends had drifted away, and all I had was a worn-out dream of becoming something more. I had watched the millionaires' kids laugh and play, their lives glimmering like the glittering diamonds they flaunted. It hurt. My eyes burned with unshed tears, yearning for a glimpse of the freedom they had, yet shackled by my reality. Then, I saw her. Ivy Lane, daughter of the richest businessman in town, gliding past me like a princess from a fairy tale. Her hair sparkled in the sunlight, and she moved with an elegance that made heads turn. But that day, there was something different about her. Her usual smile was missing. Instead, her eyes looked lost, haunted. My chest tightened at the sight. Was the girl surrounded by luxury, drowning in her own silence? As I instinctively followed her, I felt the crowds whisper behind me. They were curious, they were judging. "She doesn't belong with those rich kids," they muttered, glancing at me with pity. I tried to hold my head high, but every step felt like climbing a mountain. The heat of their gazes pressed down on me. Ivy walked into a hidden alley, and, without thinking, I followed. It was a narrow path, littered with broken dreams and shattered hopes much like mine. There, in the shadows, Ivy crumpled against a wall, her hands trembling, her breath hitching. I felt a jolt of courage and stepped closer. "Are you okay?" My voice was soft, almost a whisper against the harsh silence. But she didn't hear me. She was caught in a storm of her own. Suddenly, she looked up, and her eyes met mine. One expressive gaze spoke volumes: fear, anger, confusion. I could sense her struggle, like an invisible rope tightening around her throat. I remembered my own voice, how I lost it by surrendering to the noise around me. "You don't have to fight this alone," I managed to say, and the words felt like a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. Ivy blinked, surprised. Her world of privilege and perfection stood stark against my rough edges and humble beginnings. It felt surreal, the two of us, one drowning in sorrow, the other yearning for purpose. Moments stretched between us, thick and tangible. What was I even doing here? What if she rejected me? My heart raced. Finally, Ivy spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "Why do you care? You don't know anything about me." Her words sliced through the stillness, and I felt the weight of her pain in that small alley, but before I could respond, someone shouted from the end of the street. The noise crashed into our moment like a tidal wave, shattering the connection we'd begun. Ivy's expression changed. Alarm bloomed in her eyes like a deer startled in the headlights. In a split second, she grasped my hand, and I felt raw terror pulse between us. "We have to go," she said urgently. And just like that, everything I thought I knew about my life collapsed around me. "Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The alley swallowed us whole, the chaos behind us fading into a muted echo. Ivy's grip tightened around my hand, her breath quickening as we ran deeper into the labyrinth of narrow streets. Fear buzzed in the air, charging every stride with urgency. I had no idea what we were fleeing from, but the weight of her palm against mine anchored me, tethering me to the moment, this inexplicable connection between two girls from different worlds. "What are we running from?" I panted, my heart drumming in my ears. Ivy didn't answer immediately, her gaze darted around, eyes wide with panic. Finally, breathless, she slowed down just enough to catch her breath. "It's nothing. I just needed a break." Her voice cracked, exposing the fragility of the facade she maintained. That a cascade of emotions rushed through me: fear, concern, an overwhelming desire to protect. "You don't have to go through this alone," I blurted out, just as I had moments before. "I'm here. Just tell me what is going on." I barely recognized the steadiness in my own voice. Ivy's expression shifted, uncertainty mingling with something softer, vulnerable even. "You don't understand," she whispered, looking down at her feet as if they held the answers she couldn't articulate. That I could feel the weight of all her unexpressed fears and expectations bearing down on her. "Try me," I urged, half pleading, half encouraging. "I'm a poor girl, I'm used to understanding struggle." Her laughter, abrupt and unsteady, was like a glass shattering. "You think being poor is the only struggle? You think money shields me from pain?" The sharpness in her voice caught me off guard. "I can't breathe, you know. They expect me to be perfect, to smile all the time. It's like drowning in a sea of glamour." With those words, pieces of Ivy's golden life glimmered around her like shards of glass, beautiful but dangerous. I sensed a crack in her armor, but it was perilously close to a full fracture. "But I don't want you to drown," I implored. She finally looked up, her eyes glistening under the dim light of the alley. "And what will you do about it? You think you can jump in the water and save me?" "I would try," I said fiercely, the truth spilling out of me unbidden. "I would try just to make sure you know you're not alone." A fleeting moment fell thick between us, charged with an unspoken understanding. Ivy's defenses wove tighter with each second, and I feared I was losing her. "Is that why you followed me? Because you pity me?" she asked, her defenses rising. "No." I insisted. "No, it's not like that. You inspire me." Her breath caught, and for a moment, disbelief flickered across her face. "Inspire? Me?" "Yes," I nodded. "I've seen you up there, you don't have to be quiet. You have a voice. You could what? Change the world. Show everyone the real me. What if the real me is a mess? What if I can't even help myself?" Her words cut deep. The walls around Ivy, once so imposing, now trembled. A flicker of vulnerability washed over her, a chink in her armor. "I believe you can find your voice," I replied softly, "even if it's not perfect, it's yours." Tension hung in the air, raw and unyielding. We stood there, mere inches apart, suspended in a moment that felt too big for our small alley. As if she were about to say something monumental, her breath stilled, and then the sound of footsteps echoed from the street entrance behind us. My stomach dropped, instinctively preparing for chaos as two figures appeared, their silhouettes sharp against the warm light. "Ivy!" shouted a familiar voice, slicing through the tension. I didn't recognize the other, tall, with an air of authority about him. Ivy's eyes widened in recognition, a flash of fear darting across her features. "No, no, not them," she whispered, and I could feel her panic growing palpable, a pulse of urgency that intertwined with my own uncertainty. Before I could question, she clutched my hand tighter, her grip clammy yet determined. "We need to go," she said with newfound resolve. And in that moment, the walls of Ivy's south world seemed to close in on us. The stakes felt impossibly high, our next move would determine everything. The shadow cast by her father loomed larger, and the thrill of connection between us was at risk of shattering. We turned to run, but as I glanced back, one of the figures stepped closer, revealing a face I recognized all too well, my own family's blueprint, a life I had tried to escape. "Where do you think you're going?" he called out, his voice dripping with judgment. My heart lurched, caught between the storm brewing within Ivy and the past I thought I had already left behind. I glanced at Ivy, my heart heavy with uncertainty. Who was I fooling? Could I truly save her when I couldn't even save myself? As we ran deeper into the alleys, Ivy's rapid breaths echoed behind me, a chorus of fear that almost drowned out the sound of my own heartbeat. I felt the weight of my family's gaze burning into my back, a reminder of the life I barely escaped. When had I become so wrapped up in Ivy's struggles that I forgot my own? Her world tangled with mine, a web neither of us had anticipated. Where are we going? I gasped, trying to match my pace with hers, but my legs were heavy with exhaustion. Somewhere safe, Ivy panted, though the conviction in her voice dulled under the clarity of fear that I turned the corner, leading us to a small park devoid of the crowds that normally filled it during the day. Crumpled benches stood watch beneath the glow of a flickering streetlight, the air thick with a bittersweet scent. Ivy collapsed onto a bench, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly, but her face remained taut. I followed her lead, sitting beside her, the faintest whisper of comfort exchanged between us. Will they follow us? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She shook her head but didn't meet my eyes. They always know where to find me, she said, her tone breaking with resignation that I tried to think of something reassuring to say, but instead, I let the silence stretch. In that space, Ivy's vulnerability shimmered through the cracks of her bravado. A small bird flitted past, a moment of joy in its boundless flight. I wished I could carry that sense of freedom to her. The hints of hope I saw in her faded beneath the weight of her world. I don't want you to feel trapped, I finally murmured, my fingers brushing the rough wooden surface of the bench, trying to ground myself. You deserve what do I deserve? She interrupted, her eyes narrowing. To be perfect. To wear a mask that everyone admires while I suffocate beneath it. I swallowed, pulling my knees to my chest. You deserve to be real, I said softly. To be happy. She rolled her eyes, frustration evident. How can I be happy when my whole life feels like it's a lie? Then tell me the truth, I urged, my heart racing. What do you want? For a heartbeat, I thought I saw something shift in Ivy before she hardened again. I want to be free, she said, her voice barely a whisper as if the word itself held the power to unleash everything she suppressed. Free from expectations. Free to make my own choices. A gust of wind rustled through the trees, carrying the remnants of autumn leaves. I turned to her, desperate to help her share that weight. Then let us find a way together. We can find some place that feels safe, where you can breathe. She stared at me, a mix of disbelief and hope flickering in her eyes, but it was chased away by the shadows of her past. There's south no safe place for someone like me, she whispered, looking down at her hands which were now trembling. Why does it have to be that way? I asked, silently urging her to break free. What if you stood up and said who you really are? No more masks. The moment was fragile, and silence enveloped us again like a warm embrace. Slowly, tears filled Ivy's eyes, shimmering like trapped stars. I've only ever been what everyone else wanted me to be. I don't even know who that is anymore. Just then, I felt the approach of footsteps again, heavy and steady, pulling me out of our bubble. Ivy's head snapped toward the sound, her entire demeanor shifting to that of an animal sensing danger. They found us, she said, her tone barely containing her panic. The footsteps grew closer, and another figure emerged from the shadows, another face I wished I could forget. It was Nathan, my brother, wearing an expression more concerned than angry. What are you doing here? He demanded, glancing between Ivy and me, confusion creasing his brow. I came out for fresh air, I lied, wanting to shield Ivy from my world, a worthless of a shield, a flimsy excuse. Right, he retorted, voice dripping with skepticism. And I'm just supposed to believe that? Ivy, you shouldn't be with her. This girl stop. Ivy suddenly shouted, her voice sharp in the quiet night. I'm not some pet you can just collect. I don't belong to anyone. Her declaration cut through the air, surprising Nathan into silence. I watched in awe as Ivy's voice held firm, power surging through her. For a moment, we were reminded of the strength that a voice can wield, and I felt a flicker of something I hadn't realized I needed a belief in Ivy, but before I could say anything, Nathan's expression changed from concern to something colder. You don't know what you're asking for. His eyes held a glimmer of intimidation I couldn't ignore. "This isn't a game, Ivy. You're playing with fire." Ivy's face fell, the fire inside her sputtering as uncertainty washed over her. I could almost see the walls rising again, sealing her off from whatever courage she had found. "No," I interjected fiercely, standing up between them. "She's trying to reclaim herself. No one has the right to take that away from her." A heavy silence settled, thick with unspoken truths and looming challenges. Nathan stepped closer to Ivy, and I instinctively reached for her hand, feeling the pulse of our connection a tether to a world brimming with potential, a breath away from breaking. As I looked into Ivy's eyes, pleading silently to let this moment matter, a single tear slid down her cheek. Then, her gaze shifted back to Nathan, filled with a tempest of defiance that threatened to break free. And then the bombshell detonated. "I know about your secret," Nathan hissed. "And if you think you can just walk away from that," Ivy's breath caught and everything around us dimmed. A shred of hope disappeared in a swirl of fear, leaving behind an aching uncertainty. "What secret?" I choked, realization settling heavy in my chest. "The walls around Ivy could crush her if we didn't fight back, together." Ivy's gaze faltered for just a second, but the gravity of it all hung between us, teetering over the edge of revelation. And we stood poised upon a precipice, frozen in a moment where everything could change or shatter entirely. The weight of Nathan's words hung in the air, an ominous shroud over the fragile moment we had constructed between us. Ivy's eyes widened, revealing a torrent of emotions swirling just beneath the surface: fear, anger, shame, all interlaced with the raw need to protect whatever semblance of truth she had left. "What do you mean?" I managed to whisper, though the tremor in my voice betrayed the calm facade I tried to maintain. The uncertainty gnawed at me as I shifted my weight, the pressure almost suffocating. Nathan smirked, a cruel twist that sent a shiver down my spine. "Come on. You think you're the only one who can keep secrets?" He leaned closer to Ivy, the threat palpable in his breath. "You can't escape the life you've built, Ivy. That freedom you crave. It has a price. And you have no idea what you'll lose if you chase after it." I felt Ivy's hand tense in mine, her pulse quickening. "What have you told her?" she demanded, rage simmering just beneath her skin. "What do you think I'm going to lose?" "Everything," he replied, amusement dancing in his eyes as though he were savoring her turmoil. "You think you can just run away from me? From what you've been promised?" The implication of his words twisted something deep within me. I wanted desperately to defend Ivy, to demand Nathan tell us what he knew, but my voice faltered in the face of his gauging intent. Somehow, it became clear to me that the battle lines had shifted, and Ivy stood dangerously close to losing not only her freedom but a piece of her very identity. "No!" I cried suddenly, fear propelling me forward. "You don't get to decide what she loses, Nathan. You don't decide for her." Ivy's breath shook, her eyes darting between Nathan and me, wrestling with a storm of thoughts. "What do you mean promised?" she asked, the vulnerability slipping back in, threatening to drown her newfound resolve. He grinned, that chilling smile widening. "Let's just say that some promises can't be broken, especially when they come from someone who has everything to lose." "Enough!" Ivy shouted, and I marveled at the power in her voice. There was fire in her now, a spark trying to ignite despite the shadows looming over us. "Stop pretending I belong to you or anyone else. I'm not your marionette." Nathan recoiled momentarily, and I caught the faintest flicker of surprise on his face. "You want to cut your strings? Be careful what you wish for. I wouldn't want to see you fall. You have no idea what happens when you step outside your little bubble." Ivy's face hardened, a mix of desperation and bravery that almost took my breath away. "I'd rather choose my own fall than let you dictate how high I can fly." In that moment of defiance, I saw an echo of strength in Ivy, a fleeting notion that perhaps she could truly break free. Yet, Nathan's presence loomed menacingly, a reminder of the chains still waiting to bind her. Fighting to control my emotions, I faced Nathan, unwilling to back down. "You're part of the reason she's trapped. This isn't about you controlling her life anymore, I said, the quavering in my voice dissipating into something more fierce. You're not the one who gets to shape her destiny. His brows knitted together in irritation, but before he could respond, Ivy pulled away from me, her body trembling with fierce energy. I won't just let you steamroll over me. I refuse to be another one of your pawns. Nathan narrowed his gaze, the veneer of amusement slipping as he considered her resolve. You really think you can walk away, don't you? He said, an incredulous laugh bubbling up. Ivy, there are stakes you cannot begin to comprehend. Her expression softened momentarily, and a thread of doubt wormed its way through her determination. What does that even mean, Nathan? What are you hiding from me? Before he could respond, the previously flickering streetlight above us flared out, casting us into an even deeper darkness. A chill crept between us, suffocating the air, and I felt Ivy's hand slip from mine, the connection severing that eye and that distance. Everything felt amplified, the unspoken threat enveloping Ivy, Nathan's towering presence blocking her path to freedom, and the impending darkness that threatened to consume us all. Ivy! I called out, reaching for her again, but the distance felt insurmountable as shadows danced across her face, creating a tapestry of uncertainty. She was losing herself once more, surrounded by the darkness that enveloped her past. Nathan stepped closer, his voice a low hiss. Ivy, you don't want to know the truth. Or do you? Ivy's eyes flashed with some newfound determination. I want to know everything, she declared, though the tremor in her voice was a telltale sign of her wavering confidence that in that moment, I understood the precipice she stood on, the endless void attempting to swallow her whole. Time felt frozen, and we were suspended between two worlds, her choice hanging delicately on the balance. Just remember, Nathan murmured, his eyes glinting with a dangerous edge. You might not like what you find. And as he retreated back into the shadows, leaving us with the weight of his words, the silence screamed between us. Ivy's breath hitched sharply, and the quiet buzz of the night transformed into a cacophony of unseen forces, ready to tear us apart. Are you okay? I whispered, desperate to bridge the chasm that had formed between us, but as Ivy stood rooted, staring into the abyss, I realized that whatever revelation was waiting to surface would become the catalyst for everything to come. Her answer might hold the very essence of truth or pave the way for something irrevocably lost. The night stretched on, thick with unanswerable questions and a looming chasm, where imagination met the stark reality of choices yet to be made. The chill in the air intensified as Ivy continued to gaze into the darkness, her thoughts rooted somewhere in the depths of her own turmoil. The weight of her decision was palpable, an electric current coursing between us. I could feel her wrestling with the truth, with the shadows Nathan had unleashed in this moment. Every second stretched, the air thick with unresolved tension, as if the universe itself held its breath. Ivy, my voice broke through the thick silence, tentative yet filled with longing. I stepped closer, reaching out again. Please, just tell me what you're thinking. She blinked slowly, as though coming back from a faraway place. She stammered, shaking her head as if to clear the fog. I feel like I'm stuck between what I want and what everyone expects of me. Then let us find out what you truly want, I urged softly, not wanting to push too hard. I wanted to be the anchor for her in this turmoil, to help guide her without being another source of pressure. You don't have to let Nathan dictate your life. A flicker of something ignited in her eyes, defiance, perhaps, but also doubt. But what if I'm not strong enough to break free? What if I turn out to be what he claims I am? Listen, I said, my heart aching for her vulnerability. What you are is courage embodied. You've already shown it tonight by standing up to him. That matters more than you know. Ivy took a trembling breath, eyes searching mine as if looking for validation, for hope hidden in the labyrinth of doubt. What if being courageous means walking away from everything I've ever known? What if I lose everyone? I shook my head, unwilling to let fear infiltrate her heart. You might find people you never expected to stand by your side, I replied. This journey, it's about discovering who you truly are, redefining what the word home even means. A small smile crept onto her face, bittersweet and delicate like the first light of dawn. For a brief moment, I thought she might take a step toward me, draw strength from my presence. But then the smile faded, replaced by uncertainty as Nathan's shadow loomed in her mind. "Nathan's right about one thing," she said quietly. "There's a cost to this freedom. My past, it's a part of me. I can't just erase it." As she spoke, my heart sank. I could feel the weight of her history pressing down on her shoulders. "You don't have to forget it," I said gently, stepping closer. "But you can learn from it. It doesn't have to dictate your future." Just as I reached for her hand, an unexpected sound interrupted the honk of a car horn blaring from down the street, jolting us both. A moment later, a figure emerged from the vehicle, catching my eye as they stumbled out, laughter spilling into the cold air. It was Jess, my best friend, scruffy hair wild, clearly in the midst of a spontaneous adventure. "Hey! I wasn't sure if I'd find you here," she called, her smile wide and contagious. Her energy filled the space between us, a beacon of light piercing the growing shadows. Ivy's gaze shifted, the tension in her body loosening slightly as Jess approached, completely oblivious to the storm that had just passed between us. "You two look like you could use some fun." Jess grinned, glancing back and forth, sensing the charged atmosphere. "Let's break the Ice Queen's spell and hit that late-night diner." Ivy's hesitant expression softened, and for a moment, I saw a glimpse of relief flood her features. "I don't know," she began, the weight of everything still anchoring her down. But Jess stepped closer, resting a hand on Ivy's shoulder, her sincerity glowing. "Come on, just one night. You deserve to laugh, to breathe, to not think about him or any of this." Ivy hesitated again, caught in a web of emotions somewhere between retreating to safety and stepping into the light Jess offered. I could see her weighing the risk against the comfort of her usual life, torn between the audacity of freedom and the fear of what lay waiting on the other side. "Just for a little while," I suggested, something inside me pleading with her to take this chance. "You don't have to decide anything right now." Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she nodded slowly. "Okay." As we stepped away from the shadows, I felt a momentary lift in my chest, the ghost of doubt momentarily silenced. But even as we walked toward that bright beacon of diner lights, a nagging unease settled over me, something I couldn't quite shake. Suddenly, Ivy's voice broke through my thoughts. "Wait," she said, her tone heavier now. I turned, half expecting her to reconsider, but instead, a flicker of fear flashed across her face. What if Nathan really knows something? What if before she could finish, her phone buzzed startlingly in her pocket, interrupting her? She pulled it out, a pale shade washing over her features as she read the message. It's from Nathan," she whispered, her voice trembling dangerously. "He says he'll be waiting for me. He knows where I am." The thrill of hope that had briefly lifted us both shattered like glass, the clarity of the moment eclipsed by the looming shadow of uncertainty once again. In that breathless panic, I could feel the walls closing in as Ivy's freedom hung by a thread, suspended precariously in a reality that had just shifted once more, the battle not just for her voice, but for her very freedom, far from over. The flickering neon lights of the diner pulsed like a heartbeat against the night. I stood frozen, the warmth of the moment lost in Ivy's sudden fear, her eyes wide as she clutched her phone in trembling fingers. "What do I do?" she breathed, her voice cracking as the panic surged within her. That I wanted to reach out, to hold her and remind her that she was not alone in this moment. But instead, a heavy silence enveloped us, one that felt heavy with shadows, as if Nathan himself were imposing his will even from afar. "Ivy, let us just go inside, okay? We'll think of something, I promise," I urged gently, watching as her resolve flickered uncertainly. Before she could respond, Jess, ever the light-hearted savior in moments like this, chimed in. "Let us order some fries and a milkshake. Nothing solves problems quite like those." She squeezed Ivy's shoulder once more, her bright demeanor ripping through the darkness that threatened to consume us. Ivy nodded slowly, her eyes darting to the text on her screen as if expecting Nathan to leap out from behind the diner's gleaming facade, but Jess's enthusiasm seemed to tether her to the present. "Yeah, maybe just for a little while," she murmured, inhaling deeply as if gathering her courage. The three of us shuffled into the diner, the door's bell jingle punctuating the space as the scent of fried food washed over us. The turmoil felt momentarily detached, replaced by the buzz of conversations and laughter echoing from the booths. But even as we settled into our seats, Ivy's gaze remained lost in thought, the frown upon her brow reflecting the weight of her unspoken fears. While Jess enthusiastically placed our order, I studied Ivy. "Are you okay?" I asked, leaning closer, my voice dropped to a whisper, worried that Nathan's shadow loomed over us still. "I keep thinking, what if he really does know something? What if he does come after me?" She replied, tracing the rim of her glass with anxious fingers. I wanted to say something comforting, to reassure her that we'd figure it out together, but the truth hung heavy between us that Nathan's reach was as formidable as the doubts encircling Ivy's heart. "Even if he knows, that doesn't change who you are or what you want," I said, hoping my words would take root in her heart. "We'll tackle this together, I promise." A moment of quiet passed, the colorful diner fading around us as we locked eyes. "Together," Ivy repeated softly, a hint of hope glimmering in her voice. But just as Jess returned with our steaming plates and bubbly milkshakes, Ivy's phone buzzed again, a harsh reminder that Nathan was still very much a part of her reality. She glanced at the message with a pained expression, and in that split second, the warmth in the diner felt like a cruel joke. "I can't keep doing this," Ivy blurted suddenly, her hands shaking slightly on the tabletop. "I can't just sit here and pretend everything is fine when it feels like I'm being suffocated by him." "Then don't pretend," Jess said firmly, her voice a contrasting calmness in the tempest of Ivy's emotions. "What do you really want to say to him?" Ivy's eyes brimmed with unshed tears, her shoulders trembling under the weight of years of expectation and fear. "I want to tell him to leave me alone. That I'm not his puppet." "Then do it," I urged, the determination bubbling in my chest. "You have the right to speak your truth, and we'll be here for you every step of the way." With a deep breath, Ivy closed her eyes for a moment, gathering her thoughts before her fingers flew across the screen, the intensity of emotion guiding her as she typed. I leaned in, feeling both anxious and proud as I witnessed her reclaiming her voice. Yet, beneath the surface of that pride, an unsettling thought gnawed at me. What would Nathan's reaction be to this newfound defiance? Jess and I exchanged glances, sensing the seriousness of what was unfolding, the air thickening with anticipation. A moment later, Ivy paused, her thumb hovering over the send button, her face a mixture of triumph and terror. What if he doesn't take this well?" she whispered, the reality biting deeper as her voice cracked once more. "Then we'll figure it out. You have us," I said, my heart echoing my resolve. "No matter what his reaction is, you're not alone in this." At that, Ivy pressed the button. As the message sent, we held our collective breaths. Yet, before we could breathe out, her phone vibrated violently on the table, a thunderous noise in the sea of chatter around us. The screen lit up with a new message from Nathan that seemed to scream louder than the rest of the world, chilling us to our cores. "Ivy," I said, barely processing what it might say, I think, but she was already staring at the screen, and the color drained from her face as her eyes widened in horror. He says he's on his way," she whispered, voice trembling. "He's coming here." In that moment, everything shifted once more. The diner felt suddenly too small, the laughter and warmth replaced by a thick, suffocating dread. Ivy's hand gripped mine tightly, a vice of fear and desperation. The night had promised freedom, yet the specter of her past crashed upon us with a force I hadn't anticipated. As the door swung open, a gust of late-night wind blew in, accompanied by the unmistakable figure of Nathan, his presence looming, dark and unyielding. My heart raced as I caught Ivy's frantic gaze, her face a portrait of fear as reality bore down on us once more. In that split second, I feared not just for Ivy's safety, but for the fight we were about to face, realizing that our true battle was only just beginning. The jingle of the diner door seemed to slice through the tension like a knife, each chime melding with the heartbeats of those within. I dared to look back at Nathan, his imposing figure advancing toward our booth with confidence that felt predatory. Ivy clutched my hand tighter, her knuckles white against the table's hazy veneer, as if I could shield her from the storm that was about to break. "Stay calm," I whispered, though my own voice trembled with uncertainty. Jess mirrored my stance, shifting slightly to block Ivy from Nathan's view, a protective barrier that made me swell with gratitude for her unwavering support. That I could feel the weight of Nathan's gaze, as heavy as an anvil, inviting dread upon our table. "So, this is where you chose to hide?" He sneered, casual malice dripping from his words. "I thought I taught you better than to associate with." He gestured dismissively toward us, his eyes flickering with disdain. "People like them. Don't you dare talk to them like that," Ivy shot back, her voice shaking but resolute, a defiance that caught me off guard. "They are my friends, and I want nothing to do with you anymore." His lips curved into a sinister smile, as if her declaration amused him rather than angered him. "Oh, but Ivy, you don't quite understand. Not yet. You can't just run away from your obligations." He stepped closer, his presence an electric current that shocked the air around us. Jess, fueled by the flicker of Ivy's newfound bravery, leaned forward. "She's not your property, Nathan. She's her own person, and it's time you acknowledged that." Her words struck a chord in Ivy, and for a moment, hope glimmered in her eyes. But Nathan's laughter erupted, a dark echo in the confined space that drowned out the bustling chatter of the diner. "You don't get it, do you? Her voice is nothing without me, without my backing and power. She's nothing without my guidance." "Stop it!" Ivy yelled, her pent-up frustration boiling over. "You don't get to decide who I am or who I will be. I am not your puppet." The diner fell silent around us, the air thick with a collective gasp as patrons turned to observe the confrontation unfolding at our booth. For the first time, I truly believed Ivy was breaking free of her chains. My heart soared, even with a flickering apprehension wound tightly within it. Nathan's smile faded, and for the first time, I saw a crack in his armor. "You think you've won, don't you?" He sneered, no longer able to mask the flicker of fury in his eyes. "But you will regret this. I'll make sure of it." As he stepped back, a promise simmered in the air, heavy and electrifying. I glanced at Ivy, whose face conveyed a cocktail of emotions: relief, defiance, yet an undeniable flash of fear. "Let us go," I urged, ready to escape the suffocating atmosphere. Jess nodded in agreement, her determination sharper than ever, but as we rose from our seats, Nathan's voice cut through the weight of our decision like a hot blade. "You don't even know what you're opening yourself up to, Ivy. I know where you live. I know where you go to school. I know exactly how to make your life a living hell." A cold shiver danced down my spine, and Ivy faltered, her resolve waning as doubt flooded her mind. I stepped closer, standing like a barricade against Nathan's venomous words. "You leave her alone," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "If you wanted her to be afraid of you, you've already lost. I will never lose." "Not with her," he shot back, fixing his glare on Ivy. "You'll see." The challenge hung heavily in the air, the pieces on an unseen chessboard shifting with every confrontation. As we hurried out, Ivy's shaky breath caught me off guard. What if he's right, though? What if he can find ways to hurt me? Her voice was small, and the darkness of uncertainty threatened to creep back in. That I wish I could promise her safety. I could sense her walls crumbling as doubt danced in the corners of her mind. "I won't let him," I vowed, squeezing her hand gently. "We'll stand together." As we reached the parking lot and slipped into my car, the comforting hum of the engine felt like a brief reprieve from the chaos. But the unease rolled back in, thick and suffocating without the diner's vibrant atmosphere. Jess remained beside us, her presence a steadying force. Ivy's phone buzzed again, drawing our attention. The screen lit up with another message from Nathan. I held my breath, an icy wave of trepidation cascading over me as she read it. Her face paled, and I could see the words clawing at her resolve, shaking the foundation she had just begun to build. He says he's already at my house. The air escaped my lungs as realization crashed down on us like a tidal wave, an unfathomable depth of fear heavier than anything we had faced thus far. IVS Harbor was no longer safe. I could almost feel the walls creeping closer around us, and dread settled deep in my gut. The fight we entered was shifting, evolving, becoming something far darker than I had anticipated. And as I glanced at Ivy, her expression a flicker of lost hope, I realized that our journey to reclaim her voice was only the beginning of a much graver battle that lay ahead. That I took a breath, staunching the rising fear as uncertainty churned within me. It wasn't just about fighting back anymore, it was about ensuring that Ivy could even have a voice left to reclaim. Without another word, I turned the key in the ignition, the hum of the engine roaring to life beneath us, but the shadows threatening to consume Ivy's spirit loomed larger than ever. The air in the car felt electric, crackling with tension, as the gravity of Nathan's message settled over us like a dark cloud. I glanced at Ivy again, her eyes wide and shimmering with unshed tears, twisting her phone anxiously in her hands. Every moment felt stretched, as if time itself had decided to hold its breath. "I can't go home," she whispered, fear threading through her voice. "What if he really is there?" "Then we can think of a different plan," Jess assured her, her tone firm but soft, coaxing. "We can't just let him have the upper hand." Ivy nodded slowly, though doubt still flickered in her gaze. It was horrifying to see her confidence teeter, the weight of Nathan's threats pulling her down like quicksand. I reached out, resting my hand over hers, hoping my warmth could anchor her, but I knew we were all adrift in this storm. "Okay," I said, cobbling together the remnants of my scattered thoughts, "let's think. We won't return home just yet. We could head to the coffee shop down the street until we figure something out. It's crowded, and there are people around. He won't dare try anything there." "Or maybe he will," Ivy countered, a tremor in her voice but a spark of defiance lingering beneath it. "We'll stay together," I reminded her, the conviction in my words belying the turmoil within me. "He can try and scare us, but we don't have to walk into his trap." Jess reached into her bag, pulling out her phone. "Let me text my brother. He can help us. He'll have someone drive us anywhere we need to go and keep a watchful eye until we're safe." As she texted, I turned my attention back to Ivy, watching as her internal battle played out across her features. For a brief moment, the corners of her mouth curled into the hint of a smile, as if she was catching the remnants of her earlier courage. But then it flickered away, like a candle threatened by the wind. "I'll never be able to escape him, will I?" Ivy murmured, her voice vulnerable, betraying the weight of a realization that left an emptiness within me. Her words cut deep, a sobering truth that sent a shiver of dread through my bones. "You can escape him, Ivy. You already have a start. You stood up to him in there. Not many people have the strength to do that." "I don't know if it was strength or just desperation," she finally admitted, tears pooling in her eyes. "Maybe both," Jess chimed in, her attention shifting from her phone to Ivy, her determination unwavering. "Every small victory counts. You just need to remind yourself that he may have power, but he doesn't have control over who you choose to be." We drove in silence after that, the hum of the engine a constant backdrop to our unfolding chaos. The coffee shop loomed into view, a cozy beacon of comfort against the encroaching darkness. As I pulled into a spot, I scanned the area, committing every face and detail to memory, the stakes now higher than ever. Once inside, the familiar aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, wrapping us in a brief cocoon of warmth. Customers milled around, unaware of the storm brewing just outside their periphery. I could hope this place would provide a refuge, but panic was a creeping shadow, lurking, stalking Ivy like an unshakable weight. Jess ordered quickly, and I absently watched Ivy's face as emotions flickered: determination, warmth, then dread again. "What if he's watching?" she said, glancing over her shoulder, nerves transforming the air into something oppressive. "Then we watch back," I said quietly, my irritation at Nathan's haunting presence flaring. I refused to let him take this moment from us, not when Ivy was steadily trying to reclaim her power. "Look," Jess said, breaking into our spiral of worry. "I told my brother about the situation, and he's on his way here. He'll get here fast." Ivy turned to Jess, her earlier apprehension reflective in her eyes. "What if Nathan finds out? What if he's already there, or hunting us?" With every word, Ivy's fears rebounded off the walls, heavy and tangible, twisting tight in my chest. I mustered a look of reassurance. "We'll be okay. We'll face whatever happens together." But amidst the comfort of that promise, another chill crept in. How could we be sure Nathan hadn't already set his wheels into motion to thwart our attempt to find safety? As we settled into a booth, waiting for Jess's brother, the vibrant chatter around us felt surreal. I couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was about to shatter our fragile peace. Minutes dragged on, and I couldn't help but glance out the window, anticipation tightening my gut, when Jess's phone buzzed. She held it up, her face draining of color as she read the message. The kitchen door swung open, and just as I turned around to ask what was wrong, Ivy gasped, a hand flying to her mouth. Outside, Nathan stood barely a dozen paces away, a sinister smile stretching across his face, his eyes glinting like shards of glass. He was watching us, waiting, an ominous specter encroaching on our fragile haven. "Just remember," I murmured, squeezing Ivy's hand to draw her focus back to me, "we're in this together." Yet even as I spoke, I could feel the walls of our little world closing in, and a part of me feared that this confrontation was only the beginning, another dark turn in our journey that we had yet to comprehend. The atmosphere in the coffee shop shifted palpably, the once inviting buzz of conversation growing faint against the pounding of my heart. I watched as Ivy recoiled, the remnants of her defiance crumbling under the weight of Nathan's presence. Each second stretched into an eternity, the phone in Jess's hand forgotten as we all became painfully aware of his gaze piercing through the glass. "It can't be him," Ivy stuttered, as if the very idea was too monstrous to face. But we all knew it was. We had made a crucial misstep by gathering in this space, a place that felt warm and safe had suddenly transformed into a trap. The reality of Nathan's reach washed over us like ice water, and an instinctive urge to flee surged within me. I began to stand, but Jess caught my eye, the urgency in her expression grounding me once more. "Stay calm," she whispered, steeling herself. "We can't let him see us panic." But how do you stop panic from coursing through your veins when the embodiment of a nightmare stands a mere few steps away? Ivy's hand trembled beneath mine, and I could feel her pulse racing, matching the crescendo of despair in my chest. I wanted to tell her that we were safe, that Nathan was nothing but a shadow. But shadows can darken the brightest spaces, becoming something monstrous when given enough power. "Maybe we should go," Ivy murmured, looking desperately for a way out of the storm bearing down on us. "Not yet," I replied, my voice firm, unsure if I projected confidence or merely defiance. "Let us not make any sudden moves." But the threats hanging in the air felt clearer than ever. We weren't just in his line of sight, we were vulnerable prey. Nathan's smile only widened, as if he delighted in our tense silence, feeding off our anxiety. Jess finally broke the stillness, her tone breaking through our collective numbness. "I'll go to the bathroom. I'll accidentally call my brother to let him know we need to leave," she said, her resolve blending with fear. "We can't sit here waiting, it's dangerous." Before I could respond, she slipped from the booth, casting one last worried glance back at Ivy and me. I could feel my heart hammering in my chest, anxiety clawing at my throat as Nathan's attention swung like a spotlight toward our table. "Hey, Ivy," he called, his voice sickly sweet. "Fancy seeing you here." His tone dripped with malice, the kind that could turn honeyed words into daggers, and I fought the instinct to rise, to shield Ivy from whatever he might throw next. "Leave us alone, Nathan," Ivy said, her voice shaky but laced with a true fierceness. "You have no right to be here." He chuckled, a sound that twisted around the edges of our comfort, wrapping it tight before choking the life from it. "Right? You're still confused. You're the one who belongs to me, remember? You think you can just walk away? It doesn't work like that. His words struck like a blow, and I felt Ivy flinch beneath my hand. Rage surged within me, a searing heat igniting my resolve. She doesn't belong to you, I spat, my voice breaking through in a temporary flash of courage, but Nathan's eyes remained fixated on Ivy, a predator refusing to let go of its prey. Oh, but I know her better than anyone else. And I know how to make her feel powerless. Stop it, Ivy gasped, drawing in a shaky breath. You can't talk to me like that anymore. I'm not your toy. For a split moment, a flicker of uncertainty passed through Nathan's eyes. It was brief, but it was there a crack in his armor. It brought a flicker of hope, igniting a small flame within my chest, though I knew we weren't safe yet. Jess slipped back into the booth, her expression taut with distress. She peered past me out the window, her eyes wide, darting with urgency. We need to go. Now. He just got a text, someone's coming. I don't know who. A sense of dread gripped me. Who? But before she could answer, a different vehicle screeched to a halt outside, the sound blaring like a warning bell. Panic began to unfurl in the pit of my stomach. Nathan seemed unfazed, his lips curling in a contemptuous smirk. You think you can just run away? I want to let you go that easily. With that, he stepped forward, and Ivy's instinct kicked in. She pulled away from me, her eyes flashing with determination. Then you'll have to try harder, Nathan, she said, her voice steady despite the fear painted on her features. I refuse to be your victim. In that moment, as Ivy prepared to face the man who had terrorized her, something shifted in me, a realization that perhaps strength lay not just in resisting but in challenging the very roots of fear. Yet I also sensed that our momentary courage might just awaken the full storm, drawing Nathan's wrath tighter around us, and just then, as the door swung open with a hollow creak, the last shred of comfort ebbed away. The figure that stepped through wasn't just a pitiful reminder of Ivy's past, that it was someone we had all been dreading to see, a face that promised danger far beyond what Nathan held, and the world around us spun wildly, uncertainty sparking within each breath as we braced ourselves for what would come next, trapped in a delicate balance between hope and despair. The figure who stepped through the door really was Nathan's unseen ally, someone I didn't recognize at first, but the look in his eyes, dark and calculating, sent chills through my spine. The tension in the air thickened, wrapping around us like chains, as if every hopeful thought, every step toward freedom flickered beneath the weight of his presence. Ah, Ivy. Just the girl I was looking for, he said, his voice smooth like poison, unfurling into the space between us. My heart raced as Nathan's smirk deepened, fanning the flames of our hidden fears. I see you've brought some friends for support. Ivy's breath hitched, but determination flared in her hazel eyes. You're not going to intimidate me anymore, she stated, her voice trembling yet fierce, her heart framing the power she had begun to reclaim. If you think you can just waltz in here and take control, you're wrong. But Nathan's accomplice merely chuckled, stepping further into the diner, his gaze sweeping over us like a predator. Sweetheart, you don't understand. You think this is about control? You've already lost. Jess was at Ivy's side now, her arm around Ivy's shoulder, grounding her, but I felt the waves of uncertainty thrumming through us. You think we're going to just let you walk out of here? He taunted, leaning against the edge of the counter, radiating an unsettling confidence. Don't you see? You're in too deep. I took a deep breath, trying to find those fragments of courage that had flickered during our earlier confrontations. She isn't lost, I said, my voice steadying. And we won't let you make her feel like she is. The diner's buzz of life faded around us, faces turning to watch our battle, the once joyous atmosphere choking under the weight of the confrontation. But even as the eyes of strangers filled the room, it felt like an armor, reminders woven from the knowledge that our fight was shared. Our voices could ripple out into a world that would not sit idle. Ivy deserves to be free from you, I continued, the strength in my voice surprising even myself. Your games are over. Games? Is that what you think this is? Nathan interjected, his demeanor darkening. This is your playground as much as mine. You want to play make-believe, but you have that backwards. I'm done letting you define my life. Ivy interjected, her voice rising, that fierce fire returning as her words pulsed like a heartbeat in the air. I refuse to be who you want me to be. Not anymore. For a moment, the air crackled with our defiance, and Nathan's captivated gaze latched on to Ivy, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. But he quickly masked it with bravado, positioning himself as the master of our narrative. You really think you're ready to take on the world? You can't fight me alone, I'll make you regret it. And in that moment, a tremendous line was drawn, a chasm separating us and him, one fueled by hope and fraught with danger. Jess and I stood resolutely beside Ivy, the warmth of our support coiling around her like a protective blanket. The figure of Nathan's accomplice shifted, eyeing us with cold detachment. Do you honestly think the three of you can take on him? You're overestimating yourselves. The thing about power, Ivy, is that it comes with a cost, and he gestured dismissively at us, you don't have any leverage. No. Ivy whispered, but her voice was solid, shaking off the chains of doubt. No. I have my voice. She stepped forward, the promise of emancipation woven tightly around her fate. I always did. In a move I didn't see coming, she reached for her phone, her fingers trembling yet firm, and pulled up a group chat that had previously been buried beneath a veil of fear. Friends, supporters, and voices that echoed the truth she had long hushed. There was power in the words she crafted, and as she began typing, the enormity of that realization fell heavy onto the room, an intoxicating swell that eased the tension constricting around us. I have a voice. And so do they, she said quietly, flicking the screen around to show Nathan's smirk blurring into something more, a twitch of concern creeping across his features, uncertainty breaking through the facade. Letting them see is a fool's errand, Nathan remarked, but his voice faltered. You can't run from your legacy. They'll be my strength, Ivy declared defiantly, sending her message that would gather support, celebrating her resolve as she began to break free from the shackles of Nathan's expectations. Your strength? Nathan spat in disbelief, stepping forward, ready to snuff out her resolve. But the energy around us shifted, a crackling wave of solidarity forcing him to pause. Jess and I stood shoulder to shoulder, pleading with Ivy through our gazes to remember the power she possessed. Ignore him, I urged firmly, my voice barely above a whisper yet rich with the conviction I felt. This is your moment. Suddenly, the door swung open again, and through it stepped my brother, followed by a few friends, their faces filled with concern as they rushed to our side. An eruption of renewed energy rippled through me, realizing that we had transformed from isolated fighters into a united front. Are you okay? My brother asked urgently, assessing the scene, his support adding another layer of fortitude. Ivy's gaze softened for a split second, then hardened as she straightened up before Nathan and his accomplice. You might think you hold the power, but I am taking it back, she proclaimed, surprising even herself with the cadence of strength ringing in her voice. Get out. Nathan fumed, anger boiling over as he realized the tide of the battle had shifted. You're making a mistake, Ivy. This will end badly for you and for them. A symphony of voices rose in the diner, echoing Ivy's resolve, battling back Nathan's venomous words. Shouts of support filled the air, weaving through the lingering shadows. Someone yelled, "Go home, Nathan. She doesn't need you," and the mounting strength of our allies began to drown out the darkness that had bound Ivy so tightly. Fueled by a sense of urgency ignited by our stand, Ivy stepped boldly forward, empowered by the chorus of voices joining hers. You've defined me long enough. You can't hold me hostage anymore. I choose my freedom. And as the declaration slipped from her lips, I felt a radiant pulse of truth shatter the tension that had held us prisoner. Bursts of courage, unwavering and fierce, struck in unison from the crowd and merged into one undeniable truth: we wouldn't allow fear to control us any longer. Nathan's features swirled in disbelief, the atmosphere swirling between us transforming into one ripe with potential. Suddenly, before he could react, Jess stepped in front of Ivy, a steadfast shield. We're all leaving here together. It's time for you to realize that your hold on her is over. Our united force surged forward, shattering the glass ceilings of fear. Nathan, realizing the tide had irrevocably turned, stumbled back as the crowd began to mobilize, voices blurring into a tapestry, shouting Ivy's name, lifting her higher than she ever thought possible. In the exhilarating momentum, Ivy took a deep breath and gazed at me, trusting and radiant, all fear replaced by the electric light of possibility. It was the first time I truly saw her, the girl who had found her voice again in a sea of unrelenting shadows. Let us go, Ivy said, her strength tangible, the power palpable as we moved toward the door, the world brimming with the warmth of freedom. And as we stepped outside, watching Nathan shrink into the distance, I understood in that moment that every whispered word she had saved was crafted into a solid truth, each letter leading us closer to liberation, a fierce reminder that the universe celebrates those brave enough to find their voices. Together is where our strength lies, I whispered, squeezing her hand as we emerged into a world infused with hope, where Ivy's voice would echo with all the truth she sought, and that night, under the vast tapestry of stars, crowned by the promise of new beginnings, we had unveiled the transformative power of women, the indomitable spirit of friendship, and the beauty of finding one's true self. I would never forget her words, spoken in that simple yet profound truth that hung in the air, threaded within the very essence of our journey together. I am who I choose to become. And with that, I knew we'd never have to look back.